This way to the exit. And it's all about the entrepreneur and the investors preparing for and proactively adding exit value. There's a big difference between an exit that happens just by accident when somebody calls and says, I want to buy you, and planning for it in advance. So there are 6 steps, and we're going to very quickly go through them. First of all, we've got to know that we can maximize the exit price because strategic bidders are going to bid more money and they will buy earlier. And so the more they pay, the more they value the team and not just the net earnings of a company. And so we've often said that we are, as we invest, focusing on the team almost more than the idea. And if that team is coachable and flexible, we win. But at the exit, we need to know that that team is with us. So the clout that that team has in post sale value, I can't begin to emphasize enough. And it's likely that the team will be added to and not cut when a good strategic investor comes along. There is the curse of knowledge. We often overlook what the team does because we take it for granted. Here's a quote. If someone decided to enter our business today, how long would it take them to achieve our level of momentum? Big question. And there's value added when the person is or the company is ahead of everybody else. So here come the steps. Number one, take inventory. What are your assets strategically? That is the IP, the trade secrets, the processes. What are your core capabilities? What's your team do best? Is it sales? Is it design? Is it programming? What is it? Maybe it could be something like you have a bigger market share of a broader market. Step two, how about those emotional bidders I keep coming back to, or strategic bidders? When you find an emotional bidder, which I did for my business, it's unlikely to occur, but boy, when it happens, an emotional bidder, I've got to define that company, that CEO is desperate because there may be external threats. You might be stealing their customers. There might be internal threats. Their new product rollout was a thud, or they may be having the problem of aging products where they're losing users. Step three is identify potential strategic bidders, and those are the ones that we're looking for. Don't focus on either their ability or willingness to acquire you quite yet. We'll get to that. You can never target bidders you haven't considered. So, therefore, be expansive. Think of all the possible strategic bidders that could be a fit. But the real question you have to ask is who makes money when our venture makes money and who makes less money when we succeed? These are the strategic bidders that you're going to be looking for. Step 4 out of 6, pick 5 target strategic bidders. These are people that you believe have the ability to pay your target price. They can access credit where you might not. They can have average deal sizes that are larger than your deal. And then there's a big question, and this is one that most people don't think of. If you're more than 19%, meaning 20% of their revenues, they have to take your income into their income statement. They've got to audit you. They've got to combine you in a consolidated statement. That's going to cost them money and time. If you are 19% or less, as you will be for most buyers, then you're just a piece on their balance sheet. Big difference to those bean counters in their company and to the costs. What is their willingness to bid? Do they have a dedicated M&A team? I always like it when there is because it's a very much more professional purchase. And have they recently lost another deal? And do they have a despised uh, arch rival or two? Because if they do, that makes you a great candidate to help them.
Yep.
Step 5, track target strategic buyers, monitor for each of them, their acquisitions, their press releases, their stock price, the analyst reports. This isn't hard to do because most of these are public companies. Do we have any ties with their directors? And then there should be some progress meetings. Their internal champions, whoever you've identified, should support making the bid. And then at this point, learning who the real decision makers are. Fill in that organization chart so that you know who you should approach and who they, in turn, within their organization, should approach as well. And step 6 is select investment bankers or an investment banker. Hold a contest. Have each of 3 strategic bankers present to you and figure out which ones know more about your industry, which ones are more compatible, which ones aren't going to overcharge a fee at the beginning, as some of them do. So find one with industry experience, create the right questions to be ready to ask to all three, if those are the three that you pick. And then your board makes the final interview and decides the final or best banker. So, two is just for you to understand that we reverse engineer the exit to make it right. So, to achieve outside returns, we look for frothy marketing and market conditions. And one of the things you have to do is to list and therefore later on attract multiple bidders. It's a disciplined process, and advisors know how to manage, especially in their experience in your vertical. And then the preparation for due diligence. I am working with one of my companies right now. It took a month to put together a data room, which is an electronic data room on Box or on Dropbox or on any one of many of the various places you can. And once you have done that, it is a combination of all of your contracts, everything from your articles or designation of incorporation through all the documents, including board meetings, that allow someone to do due diligence. If you do that first, the acquisition will take a month less time, kind of a guarantee. Okay, so what's the textbook version of an M&A process? Well, I'm not going to go into detail, but typical sales process timeline is pretty long. You can get that from a slide without even reading this. And there are lots of stages to it. But really, what this whole process looks like for the average entrepreneur that isn't prepared is this. The CEO gets a phone call and,
Yep.
oh my God, what do I do? I'll get the board together, which, by the way, is required. I will try and respond. Well, maybe I won't respond now. Well, maybe I'll see what I can do. Or maybe it's time to hire an investment banker. You get the idea. The CEO doesn't want to get this phone call. This needs to be something that we plan for in advance. That leads to a suboptimal process. And a suboptimal process leads to a suboptimal price. So let's not do that. Let's create exit optionality. The reactionary exit that I just kind of described with those faces of those CEOs, all kinds of negatives. You can see them on the left-hand side, and I won't go into them. But let's call this a smart money exit, where you identify the bidders earlier and you establish visibility and you build relationships. And the things that I first talked about in those 6 steps, it creates exit optionality. And the result will always be a better exit at a higher price. And by the way, a more organized exit at that. So the last thing to tell you is a goal without a plan is just a wish. And the harder I work, the luckier I get. And I really want you to take away from this. Planning is everything. The data room can be done long before you go for the run and just kept up every time there's a new document you need to add. And investment bankers always add value to a deal.